What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another weekly update. And what I like to do in these videos is provide you guys some upcoming earnings, some upcoming events to help you get prepared for the week ahead. If that sounds like something you're interested in, consider subscribing, as I do provide daily and weekly updates to get you prepared for the day and the week ahead in this glorious market. So let's recap the past week. We've had a lot of earnings up to this point. We're kind of getting in that drought season, essentially, which there's not a lot of information quite yet. And rightfully so, this week we do have a big event coming up. But let me go ahead and throw this up here before we get started. So, last week, to start off the week, we essentially had Powell reiterating what he said the previous week in monetary policy, and essentially kind of being a little bit more hawkish than he was the previous week when monetary policy came out. He did try to clarify that it is a very small disinflation that they are seeing, that there's still some other concerns, especially in housing, that is not seeing any disinflation, and that things are still very much in play, is what he kept trying to iterate. And then now, that was the beginning of the week. We did have a bit of a run. The market, tech, I should say, tried to continue its stint. But like I've said before, going into last week, you are winding down from big earnings. After the first 3 weeks of earnings, once you get all your banks in your juggernauts in every industry, the market doesn't care anymore. We still have plenty of earnings this week. I have some listed on here that I want to watch, but the market has made up its mind. The market has already seen what is about, essentially about ready to happen. So beginning of the week was sort of bullish, and then we got really, really flat, and we didn't really do much till the back half of the week, and then we started selling off. We had stress tests come out, and they were throwing out some ridiculous unemployment numbers and some other different conditionals. Essentially, the bank stress test, if you don't know, they try to throw some really bad situations out there for the banks to handle and see if the banks can handle them. And apparently, with some of the numbers that they were throwing out there, there's a lot of good majority of the banks failed. And then you've had a lot of Fed members talking essentially all week. Again, the market hadn't really moved from the Fed members, but big thing is to, you did have Bostic on Monday before Powell came on, and he said 50-point basis move still very much a possibility. He is not a voting member, so it really doesn't matter what Bostic says, but nonetheless, he still makes a lot of headline news when he does talk. So with that being said, we came into Friday. We've essentially, with the stress test, and then we found out towards the end of the day as well that there was another flying object. It wasn't a hot air balloon, but I think it was some unmanned plane. I am recording this Friday night, so I'm sure by Sunday they'll disclose more of what it was, but nonetheless, something else got shot down by a fighter jet over Alaska. So we'll see what happens or comes with that over the weekend. Nonetheless, that could be rising tensions, which is very much a possibility with everything that's going on. But again, the biggest thing to understand here, we did have jobless claims. Jobless claims were up again, which is funny because we are getting employment numbers that seem extremely, extremely strong, and kind of makes it hard to understand what is really going on. But again, based off of the hours, full-time, part-time, and everything that's being reported, it's easily to understand that people may be working 2 or 3 jobs, and this is why you're seeing such an uptick, because wage growth is so low, and we're seeing other aspects playing into this current thesis that I've been talking about. And then that pretty much essentially wrapped up the week, leading into a big event this week, being the core CPI. This event is going to be very pivotal because of Powell and his reiteration of how it's all data dependent. Now, a lot of people get misconstrued about what could potentially happen. A lot of the economists have been incorrect over the past 2 years. So the biggest thing is you can't go purely off the data. And why I essentially have this channel, it's more of an outlet for me to kind of record what I feel, my thoughts and ideas of what the current market situation and how I plan to attack the next week or next day. But nonetheless, I share it, and I'm more than happy to share the information that I feel, my thoughts, my opinions on what I my take on the market. So, nonetheless, we have core CPI again. Now this core that is coming out on Tuesday is supposed to be altered, and we will not be counting 2 years, as opposed we'll just be doing 1 year, which is going to be interesting because I think they're trying to cut out some stuff to try to make it look better than it actually is. And the problem is that our greed index, which not this week, but last week, the beginning of last week, it was sitting roughly in the 50s, and then it's jumped up to 7. I believe it's 75 now on the greed index. So people are starting to come in, which is absolutely absurd because nothing is pointing to things getting better. And it's all hope that eventually the Fed are really close to pivoting, which, there's 3 different phases. First, you got the increase of rates start coming off the books as not being as much. So you're seeing that potentially the start of that with only 25-point basis moves. Then you essentially have that phase 2, which is a lull period, holding rates to make sure that inflation continues to fall. And then you have that essentially phase 3, which essentially is to start dialing back off the rates. You start cutting rates. Now, the biggest declines in rate decreases has essentially been 2008 and also the pandemic, right? And so now, being said, things have to be extremely bad for us to start cutting rates. And with all that being said, the thesis in which I talk is that, housing continues to get bad, that it's continuing to downfall. A lot of people are taking more HELOCs out on their home to stay above inflation. Yes, inflation has come down, but now we're not only battling inflation, we are also battling high interest rates. And so if you don't have a fixed rate on your credit card or any of your other loans that you have, you're starting to pay more for that debt you're essentially borrowing. And so now it's putting people even under more pressure because of what's going on. Credit cards are at their all-time high. Savings limits are at their all-time low. Wage growth is absolutely absurd. People that are making a lot of money are actually losing out because of the fact that the big high-paying jobs are getting cut first. But over the past week, another big takeaway that we had is Disney is laying off 7,000 more employees, right? And then you got Yahoo, which is also having major layoffs. So the layoffs are continuing to pile in. So where is this employment coming from? Now, it's funny because some companies are doing very well off of this. So your energy companies and gas companies and other commodity essentially related businesses are doing very, very well. So that's something to keep in mind. And I do have an earnings in this week that I want to keep an eye on just because of that fact. So I don't want to keep reiterating a lot of what I talk as far as my thesis on here. If you watch this channel, you subscribe to this channel, you watch this channel enough, you kind of know where my thesis is in the things that I always look at, were essentially a lot of things I just talked about. I do talk about housing. I do talk about used cars a little bit, in a sense, just because of the inflation. It's more so now just because of the current environment. I don't typically talk about that stuff, but considering the environment, we will change essentially um, the thesis or the overall ideas of this channel based on the current situations, and that's how you have to be on any market. So let's look over this week's events. Again, big, huge, pivotal week. You'll see this if you've been watching my channel at all as well. You'll notice that when we start looking at the moves for this week that are being priced in, you'll realize that we are back up to some higher numbers because of the core. Now, there's a lot of people expecting core to continue to come down. Core, they expect to be at roughly in the high 4% once by the end of the year, and then by 2% by July is what is predicted right at this moment. So that's what's going to be interesting to see if that's how that does play out. Again, core is going to be important because if at any means, if we jump back up from 6.5, you're going to get panic. And the first thing that's going to be cut very hard and very fast is tech will be sold off very quickly. And it has had an absolutely parabolic run to this point. We started to see tech. We started to see NVIDIA. We started to see Tesla started to sell off pretty heavy today. I want to see if that continues into next week, especially if core is bad. If core barely comes down, that's going to be an issue as well, because that means it's not coming down fast enough. That means Powell might have to continue to raise rates for a longer period of time. Right now, he's doing 25-point basis moves. Maybe he's tax on another one, maybe another one until he feels like inflation is coming down quick enough for him. So let's take a look at this week. Again, core is going to be extremely important. We definitely want to see that's going to dictate how we're going to play out. We're going to have another core before the next monetary policy, which the next monetary policy is until the 22nd. So we'll have another core here on the 14th. But this one is going to be very pivotal. This is going to really dictate if anything comes off of the core that's over what's expected. It's going to be a problem, and you're going to start introducing panic into the market. The question is how much panic are people going to get if core starts rises? Really depends on where core lands. And again, understand that we are getting a refined core this time, so we really want to see how altered this next report is. But that's what we got there. As far as earnings this week, again, there's tons of earnings. These are the particular ones I'm watching. I want to watch Airbnb and see how they're doing. I want to see, because that kind of gives you a taste of travel and leisure and where they're at. Expedia essentially came out and they didn't do so hot for their earnings, so it'll be interesting to see how Airbnb does. Wednesday, you have Shop. Amazon didn't do great. You want to see if Shop does better. Shop's one of those weird ones where even though they do bad, they still bottle rocket. The stock bottle rockets for whatever reason. So we'll see. It's very much a cultish like stock, but so Shop we definitely want to be watching closely. Thursday is now, so you want to continue to watch Cloud and see how that does there. Friday, we do have John Deere. I want to see how they do. That's going to kind of give us insight into that side of the house in that industry and see if construction stuff like that is still doing very well. Cat, I believe, is I'm not sure really when Cat reports, but John Deere's is one of the closer ones as well that you can kind of tell where that industry is headed from that point. So again, I don't follow them that closely, so if I'm incorrect, I do apologize, but nonetheless, that's what I use. Again, I play a lot of the same stuff, and I think if you're a trader, you should be doing the same thing, is playing a lot of the same ones. Again, I play all the ones that I am used to playing options in, and I'm okay buying shares and realizing that they still have strength and they can be the first ones to pull outs up to or lead the pack when the market does start to turn. So now watch list is something I was talking about. The expected moves for this week, again, are very high because of the core, especially SPX. You're going to get a higher count. Again, anything roughly around currently The average is roughly around 65.70. So that kind of gives you an idea what the market's trying to price in for this week. Tesla's still very high because of the parabolic move that it's had recently. Apple's still very high because of the parabolic move. And then you have BA still very high because it also, being a value stock, has had a very high move. And then again, considering where the core lands, it could be a huge move to the downside on all these if it comes in high or is barely moving. So it'll be interesting, really interesting to watch these coming into this week. So let's get into the technicals here. Now SPX, again, it's something I talked about. Really wasn't expecting it to break out 4,200. It attempted to break it at the beginning of the week, and then, like I said, it just really kind of sold off. This could be considered a bull flag. It really depends on how we open during the week. Maybe we try to retest the 41.35 and then kind of chop within here until we get core, which isn't very long. We're just going to be waiting a day nonetheless, but could be a strong possibility. But the thing is we have a lot of supports. You have dailies, weeklies, and a monthly in here holding up the market. It's not saying it's not going to break, because we've noticed that it really doesn't matter if you get core or anything like that. The market will straight butter through these supports, and it's done that very much so. So again, if we find ourselves below the 4K mark by the end of the week, that's going to be worrisome. Bears or bulls, you definitely want us back over the 4,200 if possible. That's definitely where you want us out. We've been playing 100-point ranges till we get pivotal news typically. So, and Tuesday will be just that. Tuesday is a pivotal event. So depending on where we land, again, it really depends on where the expectation is, and potentially, which I'll get into more on Monday night, but and currently where we'll go to. So again, expectations are, if we can hit to expectations, things are good. If we go too far out of expectations, again, for core, that's definitely not good. Or for core, that's definitely good. But if we do way below, say inflation's way over 6.5, then that's going to be a major issue moving forward. And then you can see the market correct. I wouldn't be surprised if that does happen Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we find ourselves down at 3,900. If that does happen, that could be very much a possibility. Again, depends on how we open on Monday. If we already gap down in anticipation for the core, which could be a very strong possibility, I think some people are a little bit wary that it could potentially fall. And so it's kind of starting to pre-sell here, so which is a normal move for the market. So we'll see. But those are what I got for SPX. And I think that's very important to see. It's always important when we land on SPX every day, but Bitcoin starting to pull back pretty heavy. There's been a lot of news coming out. There's been a lot of bad news about the market in general, but primarily with Bitcoin, there's been rumor about the SEC essentially getting rid of staking for U.S. citizens. And so you're starting to see Kraken was the first one to start removing it from their platform. Coinbase has been rumored to be one of the next ones. So staking will be potentially removed, which is one of the things that people enjoy about the crypto side. Now, if you're outside of the U.S., you're perfectly fine. But if you are in the U.S., you may not be able to be staking here very much at all anymore. So we'll see how that does go. But nonetheless, there's been a lot of talk about crypto over the past week. There's been a lot of rumors. Binance pulling out the USDC because of, for whatever reason, there wasn't, I don't think, any reason behind that besides the staking. There might be something more there that we don't know about. So we need to definitely keep our eyes on Binance over the next couple of weeks and see what happens there. If Binance collapses for whatever reason, that could be extremely worrisome, as they're the biggest exchange right now. And if they do fold, that's going to definitely put a dagger in crypto. And we're going to have to see where crypto lands if that does happen. But nonetheless, there's been a lot of negative news towards crypto, and we'll see where we go from there. The dollar has made a very strong comeback this week. But the thing is that we do need to get this thing back over 105. Now, if the core is high, there's a strong possibility this thing just gap straight up and not have to worry about all these. But bears, you definitely want this thing back over 105 and continue to start pushing. Bulls, you want this thing to keep selling off. Would definitely help your state. But we're going to have to see how that does play out. Tesla, massive rip and got its first down candle. Now, if for some reason core is high, you can expect this thing to come slamming down very quickly. Again, you have a lot of support here, so you need to be breaking through these. If you can really get below essentially that 166, 165, you're going to start to see some really heavy gas to the downside if that can happen. You got some strong support here. But again, if that CPI is bad, the support's not going to matter. This is just going to straight butter through this. So just be mindful of that. Again, I'm still looking for at least a 50-point correction on this. Again, if the market in general just starts selling and making new lows, then the 50% is not going to matter. This thing's going to continue to follow the market. So, but I'm looking for at least 150 if we do start selling off. Now, 150, I'm not saying this week, but could potentially really just depends on core. If core's that jumps back up, yeah, there's a strong possibility that can happen, maybe even lower than that. But again, it's all dictated on what's going to come at the core. But natural pullback, I would say probably roughly around the 152 is where the market is headed for Tesla. And then I'll go from there. If not, if core is good, maybe we float here around the 183, then potentially try to retest at 220 and then potentially break out from there. So that's what I'm kind of watching there. Apple, same thing. Again, you've broken through a lot of resistance, which is now support, but you're still very overextended, 50% correction. You're looking roughly around 138. If everything starts to sell off, again, depending on how that plays out, it could be worse. But bulls, you definitely want this thing back over 155 to gain some steam and really start running. But we'll have to see how that does play out. Now, BA consolidating a lot. I've been talking about this. Value, tech, and finances are all starting to consolidate, and kind of got your first breakdown of your first real true breakdown of tech. So that could be leading to something even more here coming up. So we definitely have to see what happens there. But BA, bulls, you want this to break 217. Bears, you need this to essentially break 204 to really start seeing some downside. Then we got good old JPM, again, consolidated, much like value and tech and everything. Bulls, you definitely want this thing to break 144. Bears, you want this way back down here to 130 and then break 130 to really see some downside. Again, once the banks go out, that's going to be your warning shot that you better start getting out of whatever positions because the rest of the market is coming with it. Again, Goldman Sachs, you need to really break out above 388 to have hope. You don't want it back down by 343 and then continue to sell off. It could get quite nasty there. Now, one thing that also happened this week too is Google tried to display their new version of ChatGPT, and their presentation wasn't very good. They took a massive hit over the past week as well. So they've already reclaimed about 50% of that move. There's still some downside, I think, here. Could potentially to 86. Again, really just depends on how core plays out. Now is a big one. I want to watch too. Very parabolic. If tech starts really dropping 50%, that's a pretty big move down to 415 if we're going to start playing that move. NVIDIA is another one that just broke out and starting to sell. You could potentially hit 182. Really want to see how that does play out itself as well. If the core is bad, these are the particular ones I am looking at. I'm looking at cloud and tech. If we start selling off, I think you could see some massive downside, especially with these parabolic moves and no touchbacks. Something I've talked about and warned about. You don't want these things going parabolic because it's going to come down, twice as fast as it went up. So, with that being said, that's pretty much all I have. Just trying to be short and precise. There's a lot of information in this video. I'm trying to cram in a lot. But nonetheless, I appreciate you. Go ahead and drop a thumbs up and give me your thoughts and ideas of what you think or expect from this week, what you're looking at, and so everybody else could get some ideas as well. But aside from that, have a good one, and I'll see you guys on the field.